prayerful peace as we journey through the liturgy. I have attended Vespers and Compline services with only one other person there. But as Father Lawrence Farley notes in his book, Let Us Attend, the building is still thronged with multitudes of the heavenly host. Our entry into the nave is a step into the eternal present. As we participate in the Divine Liturgy, may we remember that we never travel alone. In our next episode of the Divine Liturgy Quick Start Guide, we will continue traveling in the second part of the liturgical journey, the Liturgy of the Faithful, and focus on preparing ourselves to receive the Eucharist. I hope you can join me.
Proclaiming Christ, victor over sin and death. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, your Orthodox Internet radio connection.
This is Everyday Orthodox with your host, Elisa Bielatich-Davis. We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ. And as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is June 19th, 2022, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and this is Everyday Orthodox. Happy Father's Day. Today is Father's Day, so I hope that all the fathers out there have been appropriately celebrated in some way. We get together here every Sunday night to get to know a new Orthodox Christian and to build community through conversation. And so tonight we have a father on for our interview, of course, because it's Father's Day. But we have someone different every week, and I love getting to know different people. I like being at, coffee hour at different churches and just sitting down and asking people questions about their lives and their backgrounds and their stories. And, I find that everyone has something fascinating to tell. God made all of us so unique, and so He's scattered us into different situations, and we have different gifts and different interests and different perspectives, and I think it's just fantastic to get a moment to sit down. I've always thought every human being is like a universe, right? I didn't make that up, obviously, but every human being really is a universe with completely fascinating background and history and perspectives. And so here we are getting to know another universe tonight. And I think especially in the Orthodox Church, we have so many people who are immigrants from faraway places. We have their children who grew up in really interesting immigrant families. And then, of course, we have a lot of converts who've come from all over the world, all different backgrounds and different religions, and then have come together and found this Holy Orthodox Church. So you're invited to join us every Sunday night, not just to listen, but to join in the conversation as well. You're welcome to call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka Trudy is right here, and she's engineering the program, she's producing, and she's taking your calls. So if you call in, you can talk to her, and then she'll patch you through to me and our guest. Now, our guest tonight is wonderful. His name is Eric Ruthford, and actually really Eric Thomas Ruthford, if you're looking him up, because he's an author, and you could look him up and see his books, and you're going to hear all about what he's been writing, both books and humor, actually. He's the editor of the Daily Podvig, which is an Orthodox Christian humor and satire site. You'll find that online at thedailypodvig.com. He's also recently written a really neat novel for young adults about summer camp. And I'm a summer camp fanatic, so I loved his novel, and I look forward to talking to him a little bit about that topic as well. He also has been a newspaper reporter, a Peace Corps volunteer, a nonprofit financial manager, so he's really done a lot of interesting things, and so I think you're going to enjoy him too. So without any further ado, welcome to the program, Eric.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm so excited. I know you and I first got to know each other because you were writing your young adult book, your novel, and I love your novel so much, and I'm so glad that you've come on the show to talk about that and your own life. And happy Father's Day to you.
Oh, thank you. I have one son, and he's 10 years old, and at school they put together these popsicle stick glued together popsicle stick structures to give to dads, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was supposed to look like, but it was kind of fun to look at.
But see, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly the sort of gift that we're all supposed to be collecting. So wonderful. Congratulations with that.
Yes,
Where does your story start, Eric? Where were you born? How did things start out for you?
Oh, well, I was born in the Seattle area, and I grew up in a Boeing family, meaning that the Boeing company, the airplane company that is, transferred us all over the country. And so when I was pretty little, we moved to Northern Virginia, and then we've also been in Palo Alto, California, the Seattle area again, and then Huntsville, Alabama after that, and then the Seattle area again. So all sorts of different places. I have 3 siblings, and we grew up in a fun house with all kinds of scientific things we like to learn and play with, and just part of the inspiration for the book.
Excellent. Yeah, I know several Boeing families, actually. I'm related to some, and I know a few just as good friends of mine, people who grew up with their parents working at Boeing, and they lived in several different places as well. It's kind of funny when there's a company that moves you around, kind of like the military, like that. Was it your dad who worked for Boeing? What did he do?
Yes, he worked for Boeing, and he was manager with them, and also worked in an organization called Leadership and Learning, which does management development, and he put on seminars where they bring in managers from all over the country and do exercises and learn about new techniques and role playing, and I don't know all the details of what went on there, but it was he really liked it. It was his favorite part of his career.
Oh, that's lovely. That's just lovely. Absolutely. And so, as new management techniques came up, he was keeping everybody apprised. That's probably really a good thing in general for humanity. My guess is that the techniques have probably made the workplace a better and better place over those years. I hope so, anyway. But that's really neat. Okay, so you were moving around. How long were you in, say, the Seattle area in the first place? Was that just right when you were born and then you moved, or did you stay there for a while?
We moved when I was 1, and I got pneumonia from the Mount St. Helens eruption, if that gives you an idea of the time frame that happened.
Yeah.
And then it was 6 years in Northern Virginia, 1 year in the Bay Area of California, and then 2 years in the Seattle area, and then 4 years in Huntsville.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. All right. So that means you're just a little bit younger than me, because I remember when Mount St. Helens erupted, but you're only 1, so I've got you by a couple of years.
I don't.
Yeah, I bet you don't, but that's lousy to get pneumonia as a little 1-year-old breathing in all that smoke. That I remember, because I lived in California, and we had just ashes falling everywhere. It was nuts. But and we're so far away, right? But so you moved at 1, and then I assume you recovered from the pneumonia without any long-term problems, right?
Oh yes, that's right.
Good. And then so how did you like Virginia? What was it like to grow up there? I guess you were never really rural, right? Because you're always near a Boeing facility, so I assume you were always kind of in the suburbs. Is that right?
Yeah, suburban. Growing up suburban, and Virginia was hot, suburban Washington, D.C., and we lived just a few blocks from the neighborhood pool, and I have all kinds of memories of going there in the summer, and that's in southern neighborhoods, institution of just where you go and see people.
That is wonderful, isn't it? That's really neat.
Yeah.
And so do you still swim, or was that just like, was it really just that neighborhood because it had the neighborhood pool, or did you continue swimming in the next cities?
I guess I did swim a little bit in the next 2 or 3 places that we lived, but I didn't really do anything past high school.
Gotcha. Well, see, maybe if you'd stayed in Virginia with the pool right there, you could have been an Olympic swimmer. We'll never know. We'll never know. Okay, so then suburban Virginia until you were about 7, and then California, huh?
That's right.
Excellent. And so, but California only for a year, right? Was that tough as a little kid to be somewhere for just the 1 year, or were you still young enough at 7 or 8 years old? Was it just kind of like you make new friends in school anyway, so 3rd grade here, 4th grade there, not too big of a deal, or was that?
Yeah, it was more 2nd grade here, 3rd grade there, and it was all just new opportunities and getting to see all this cool stuff, and we were in the Palo Alto area so that my dad could study at Stanford. The Boeing company sent him to grad school there, and so it was just all this cool science stuff. They have this thing called the Stanford Linear Accelerator there, which is this 2-mile long building where I guess they send highly charged particles down this 2-mile long thing to go zap, and so they, we got to go see stuff like that.
Oh, that's so cool. I remember that too when I was a kid, and it was the neatest thing. And whenever you drive past it on, what was that, 280 up there, you drive past it, and it's so long it goes under the freeway, right? Like, it's so long.
That's right.
They're taking it down. Did you know that? It's very sad.
No, I didn't.
Apparently it's like old-fashioned now, and we were like, that was so high-tech and amazing. We must have lived in the coolest place ever if we had the linear accelerator. But alas, apparently it's not cool anymore. They know how to do that stuff without a mile-long tunnel, I guess. It was a little depressing. It's a little depressing. I found out last summer, and I was kind of sad about it. But so that's cool, though. So you were really into science, though, as a kid, were you?
Yes, we were.
The whole family was. Tell me about your siblings. Were they into it as well?
My older sister was heavily into science and interested in becoming a meteorologist, and she, in those days there was this, the Weather Channel had this meteorologist on there named John Hope, and he was a retired National Weather Service meteorologist, and whenever there was a hurricane, he would come on and just do this kind of college professor thing explaining how the hurricane worked. And in our house, we were always just rapt with attention whenever John Hope would explain how the hurricane was working. And that was something that really appealed to her.
Well, to her, but to all of you as well, huh? So tell me about each of your siblings, and like, what is the birth order, and what's everybody like?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm the second child in the family, and my older sister was probably the most adventurous of the 4 of us, and wanted to do things like rock climbing, whitewater kayaking, windsurfing, stuff like that. And so, she...
That's awesome.
And then second I was born, and then third was my younger brother, and then the 4th younger brother was 10 years younger than me. And so I have one child who's 10, and my youngest brother has 2 kids who are 3 and 1.
Okay. So you've got that's a pretty good age spread there. Did you really, if you're 10 years older than your younger brother, Well, I guess I have a brother who's 10 years older, so I kind of know how that is actually as I'm asking it. But so it's kind of nice though, right? Because you bond in a way where it's not necessarily fighting like sibling rivalry because you're so much older that you're kind of above that, right? Like you're more like, I don't know, you're more like a mentor and you kind of play with them, I would think. But how about you guys? Were you guys still close even though you had that great age difference, or were you really closer to the kids, closer in age?
We were close, yeah. I mean, I remember the two younger brothers would climb on me when I was trying to sit and read or something. And I'd say, no, don't climb on me. I'm not a jungle gem. And they would say, oh, okay, you're a jungle Eric. And,
yeah, that sounds exactly right. That is great. I love that. I love that. Very annoying little brothers, but also kind of fun too.
Yeah, climb on my head and all sorts of things like that. And I was, 12 and he was 2, and for whatever reason, those kids those age, just gravity doesn't seem to apply to them in the same way it does everybody else.
That is really true. That is very true. But I was just remembering myself that in church when we knelt down today, because in the Greek church we don't kneel down during liturgy. Well, we do kneel down most of the year, and then not right after Pascha. So now all of a sudden we kneel down again, and little kids start climbing on the older kids, like during the most solemn part of the liturgy, and it's terrible. But you're in the OCA, right? So you probably, I don't think you guys kneel on Sundays, so you don't have this experience. It would take you right back to your childhood, Eric. I tell you, it's so funny. It's very, very funny. But speaking of which, you didn't grow up Orthodox, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. So what religiously was going on in your family while all of the exciting scientific exploration was bubbling among you guys? What was happening in terms of spirituality?
Occasional visits to Protestant church, and also visiting my grandparents in Montana, who were regular churchgoers.
Okay, excellent. So, but always kind of visiting and not really having a church that you really felt you belonged to.
That's right.
Okay. And all right, so we've got the rising meteorologist and the family sort of buzzing with all of that sort of stuff. And of course in your book I know there's a rising meteorologist, so I see what you mean, how it made its way in. But so tell me, did you get to go to summer camp as a kid?
I did go to summer camp a few times. Once I went to Flathead Lutheran Bible Camp on Flathead Lake, about 90 or 100 miles north of Missoula. And it was an absolutely gorgeous facility. And I did indeed swamp a canoe there, and however, I was rescued in about a minute, and I was only about 5 minutes from the shore, so it was not nearly so dramatic as I tried to make the story in the book. But
well, it makes for a good novel, right? But yeah, in real life, usually there are a lot of counselors very nearby. But Flathead Lake, that must have been beautiful, because I have been to Missoula. And that is one of the most beautiful areas, and that Clearwater Forest there and all of that, that must just be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Neat. So, okay, so as you're growing up, it sounds like you had kind of a nice, suburban, fun existence with all of your siblings. And so where were you when you were in high school? Were you back up in Seattle?
Yeah, the Seattle area for most of high school.
And how was that? How were you in high school? What were you like?
Oh, well, I was getting interested in journalism at that time and writing, and was really liking the writing kinds of advanced classes in history. And there was also this program called We the People, a constitutional knowledge competition that we had a teacher who liked to take groups of students to the regional and national competitions for that program, and we learned all about the Constitution. I still keep in touch with that teacher, and they also have me as a guest judge sometimes to that. And and so got to do all kinds of, civic things, writing things, journalism things, student paper things in high school. And
Oh, lovely. Well, so were you thinking of yourself more though, like journalism and writing, constitutional essays and briefs and things like that? It's more, it's not fiction, right? It's nonfiction. It's much more sort of practical writing. Is that what you preferred at the time, or were you writing like short stories on the side?
I much preferred nonfiction at that time, and I went to a summer writing institute once, and that's where I met my godfather, interestingly enough. It was between my junior and senior years of high school, and I was 3 weeks of intensive study, and you got 4 college credits out of the deal, and we studied writing, and there we were writing fiction, and I was enjoying that too.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so you were broadening your horizons a bit. Tell me about your godfather. What was he like, and when you first met him, what was he like?
Oh, well, we were both 16, and his name is Brad Powell, and at that time he was planning to become a priest. However, he hadn't decided which kind of priest he wanted to be, whether he wanted to be Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, or Messianic Jewish, and Messianic Jewish rabbi, that is. And so I just got to talking with him and kept in touch with him over the years as he went through his spiritual journey. And he was eventually became, maybe 2 or 3 years after that, became Orthodox and took on the name Barnabas, and later did in fact become a priest, and so he's Father Barnabas Powell. He is not, however, Father Barnabas Powell, the podcaster.
He's the other Father Barnabas Powell.
Yes, there are 2 Father Barnabas Powells in our country, and he's the one in Kirkland, Washington. And there is this rather, enjoyable podcast interview between the 2 Father Barnabas Powells that you can search out on Ancient Faith Radio. But yeah, I got the Northwest one.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Oh, that's neat. So when you met him, how old was he when he was going through that struggle?
16.
Okay. What an interesting idea to be called, to serve God in such a profound way, but not know which church you wanted to serve. That's sort of an amazing wrestle. I've actually met your godfather, and at some point, maybe I need to have him on the show and hear about that, because that's sort of a fascinating array there too, right? Like to be a rabbi for Messianic Jews, or to be, those are some options. Those are some big options to be wrestling with. But so,
yeah.
So when you met him, he was a fellow camper with you.
Yes, he was.
Okay, so that's kind of neat. So as he, over the years, is going through this journey, I assume, looking at Catholicism, looking at Messianic Judaism, and looking at Eastern Orthodoxy, he's, you 2 are kind of in touch, and he's telling you, as he explores all of these, what he thinks about them. Is that how you were slowly hearing about Orthodoxy?
Yes, and then he decided to become Orthodox, and after that I heard all about Orthodoxy all the time, and he was about the only Orthodox person in our Lutheran university, and he was quite, he always wanted, in any classroom discussion, especially, and they had lots of religion classes there too, he wanted to wave the Orthodox flag, and when it came to time to study American church history, he was quite adamant that Saints Innocent and Saint Herman of Alaska should be included in the curriculum, and they weren't, and he thought that was just tragic.
Well, he's right, actually. I never thought about it, but That's a good point, right? The history of Christians in America, one should mention it. But, that's so funny. So, I'm surprised that didn't, terminally turn you off to Orthodoxy, honestly, because I always worry about that. I know when I was a new convert, I'm pretty sure I turned off at least 40 or 50 people to Orthodoxy by talking about it too much. Did that initial exuberance that he had, was it just kind of annoying? Did it make Orthodoxy seem annoying?
Well, we visited his church a few times together, and my first time there, I was not ready, not in the right mindset. I just got a sore back out of the deal, having stood up too long, and that was kind of it. And it was always interesting when he would present a paper in college, like one on why the differences that arose in the Council of Chalcedon were more terminological than they were theological. And it was this paper where we were supposed to make copies of the papers and then read them and review them as students helping out each other. And whenever one of his papers would come around, I'd just have to get this, have the dictionary seat next to the desk or next to the paper on the desk, going through, okay, what's this word? What's that word mean? Oh, that word isn't actually English, it's Greek. Okay, I don't have a Greek dictionary, So, I'm like, how on earth could a young man's faith drive him to write prose that was this dense? And so that was my experience at that point.
Yeah, I bet. That's kind of funny. But these were writing classes. These weren't even religion classes, were they? You would think at some point that the teachers would just be like, listen, you can't do this anymore.
Well, no, the first one was writing, and that was at the time he decided to, he was still thinking about being one of three denominations.
Right.
And then we ended up in undergraduate school together as well, at the same school, interestingly enough. And so it being a Lutheran university, they had plenty of classes that were both religion and history, and we ended up in a number of those classes together.
Aha. Now, what brought you to those classes? Were you interested in religion and history, or were they required classes?
Well, I was getting one of my majors was history, and so I was taking the required classes for that, and historical methods was one of them, and that's where we got the Council of Chalcedon paper, and then there was also American Church history, and that one was one of the required classes. I think it's 3 religion classes are required there, and so that was one of them that we took together, and and my interest in history was just I thought history was pretty cool stuff, and I also found the topic of Ottoman Empire history to be interesting because of the way that the Ottoman Empire maintained the religious communities after they occupied the territory. They, and they administered the Orthodox Christians under this system called the millet system, in which the Greek Orthodox were administered by Greek Orthodox priests who became like magistrate judges for the time of the Ottoman Empire, which I was like, oh, I had no idea it was even possible to run a country like that, so I wanted to find out more about it.
Excellent. So you, not being particularly religious or involved in church, were kind of finding that your historic interests and your choice of colleges were bringing you into all sorts of religious conversation. Were you seeking religious conversation outside of that as well, or were you just kind of buddies with someone who was seeking religious conversation?
I was seeking religious conversations out of that, and it was after the death of a great uncle when I was 19 that I went to his funeral service, and It just had quite an effect on me, and I realized that I felt like I needed to come up with some kind of answer of what kind of religious connection I was going to have, that was going to seek out with God. And so I visited quite a few Protestant churches trying to find something. And meanwhile, Brad was getting started in his Orthodox church and learning more about it and serving in the altar and getting acquainted with seminary professors so that he could get ready to apply for that in a couple of years. And so I always liked hearing about Orthodoxy during that time period, but the idea of services that were that long, I absolutely could not stomach that thought, and also just so strange.
Right?
You got to start somewhere, and I got to, that's where I was.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a real issue for a lot of people, I think, upon seeing Orthodoxy. It's like, it's beautiful, it's interesting, but gosh, it is really foreign to me. And not just if it's a different language, even in an American church, it is foreign. That is a different way to do it for sure. But we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Eric Rutherford on Everyday Orthodox, and you're welcome to give us a call if you like, 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. But we'll be right back.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
You may be fortunate enough not to be acquainted with the dragon called depression, but I think most of us have some dragon of our own. Perhaps yours is doubt, or fear, or pride, or anger. It could be called gluttony, or greed, or envy, or discouragement. Or your dragon might be anxiety, or trauma, or one of the numerous brothers' phobia. I myself have a subsidiary dragon, a sidekick of the main one, called Sloth. He's still plaguing me because he's too lazy to leave. Whatever your dragon or dragons might be, try praying to St. Margaret to help you conquer them in the power of Christ. Persevere in faith, and maybe someday the canon of saints will include Saint You, the Dragon Slayer.
From 7 Holy Women, Conversations with Saints and Friends. Now available as an audiobook at Audible, Amazon, and iTunes.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and I'm here tonight with Eric Thomas Ruthford, and he has written a really neat novel for young adults about summer camp and meteorology and all sorts of wonderful things. And so we're going to be talking about that, and actually I guess we're getting closer in here now, Eric, as we've been talking. You're finding out about Orthodoxy, and you're becoming an adult, you're finishing up at college. What did you end up majoring in, and what did you do after college? What was your first move?
Well, in college, my main goal was to become a newspaper reporter, and I got a double major in communication and history. And while I was in college, I had 6 internships at professional newspapers, writing news articles for them, and then after college, I ended up joining the Peace Corps and going to Ukraine for 2 years.
Oh, wow. To Ukraine. Wow. So what years was that, and what was it like in Ukraine while you were there?
2001 to 2003, I was in Ukraine. And it was a real beautiful country, and it was a wonderful time to be there and to learn about Ukraine and to teach English as a foreign language, which was my project, and to meet people, and yeah.
So when you were going, was your buddy kind of excited that you were going to sort of an Orthodox area, that you were going to come into contact perhaps with Orthodox people? And did that cross your mind at all? Did that seem interesting? And did you meet Orthodox folks in Ukraine?
Oh, I met lots of Orthodox people in Ukraine. I had converted to Orthodoxy just as I was finishing up college myself.
Oh,
And
no
so-
kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, I had assumed it took you a while longer. What made that difference for you?
Well, as I studied Orthodoxy more, it was the theology that really was important for me, and that I was, as I began my journey trying to find a church, I was quite adamant that I didn't believe that babies were born bearing the guilt of the original sin of Adam, and in Western tradition, almost universally, they have new babies having to be cleansed of that original sin, and so I had gone to an assortment of different Protestant churches trying to figure out a way around that and an understanding of that, and they were, the pastors were pretty adamant that no, we're born with an evil nature, and baptism has to wash us from that. And I just did not like that at all, and so it was the Orthodox Church was the only one out there that did not have that teaching. And so as time went on and I visited more, and I kind of had to say, I really do want to have a church somewhere, somehow. And so there were a number of things I wasn't fully on board with Orthodoxy at that time, but I just had to say, I'm going to put this off for later. I really want to be part of a church. And so I was baptized.
Wow. Well, and there are different lines of thinking on that, right? But I think that it does make sense at some point to say, I'm in, and I'm going to trust this, and I'm just going to keep learning more, and I'm going to try to become this thing, And sometimes that's a long, long journey, especially when you're raised in such a different kind of theology. And but I agree with you. I think it's hard. There are certain tenets like that that are really hard to accept. I struggled with that one myself, because there's just nothing evil about a baby. You look at babies and it's just patently obvious that they're good. It seems so hard to hold on to that piece. But okay, so you had become Orthodox and were kind of working your way into it. And then you went to Ukraine for the Peace Corps. How neat. Okay, and so was that experience then interesting for you spiritually as well as just being a service opportunity?
Yes, it was. And, I could visit some of the most amazing monasteries over there. And I was able to visit the three biggest monasteries that they have there, the Kievo-Pecherska Lavra in Kiev, or Kiev, if I can get the pronunciation right. It's this vowel that's not used in English, and it's hard. The Svatogorska Monastery in Donetsk Oblast, and then the Pachayev Monastery in western Ukraine. And I got to see all of them, and the amazing icons that they have, and the amazing caves that all three of them have, and and yeah, that was a very just invigorating experience spiritually, getting to see both these amazing sites and just the enthusiasm of the people the pilgrims who were going these places.
Wow. Yeah, what a remarkable thing. Because a lot of times you'll hear from people that they were able to visit somewhere like Ukraine, and then they became Orthodox. And in retrospect, they wish they had gone all these places. But you went sort of right there at the beginning. And it is interesting, right? Because Orthodoxy was like a set of theological ideas that you had read about and debated. And it was like these weird long services. But all of a sudden you go to the Ukraine, and it's this tremendous living tradition in a completely different way. I love that you were able to have that experience early on. I think that's just really neat. How long were you in Ukraine?
2 years, and I was working in a secondary school in a town called Dnipro in Zaporozhye Oblast of southeastern Ukraine.
Wow. Oh, neat. Oh, that's just wonderful. All right, so what did you do after the Peace Corps then?
Well, I came back and I went to grad school to get a master's degree in public policy in the hopes that I'd be able to come up with some kind of, continuation of the work that I was doing in the Peace Corps. I ended up working at Raphael House of San Francisco for 2 years.
What's Raphael House? What is that?
Raphael House is a homeless shelter serving families. It was founded in the 1970s by an organization called the Holy Order of Mans, which later became Christ the Savior Brotherhood, and became Orthodox in the late 90s. And so at the time that I was there, they had what they called the Orthodox live-in community, which meant that this shelter not only provided shelter to up to 17 families experiencing homelessness at the time, but they also offered long-term places to live for the staff members. And I was one of them, and got to live on the 3rd floor of this building and just had the most wonderful team to work with, and there were always things going on, and it was quite the experience.
Oh, that's neat. That's really neat. How lovely. All right. So you were down in San Francisco. You're working. At what point did you meet your wife?
It was in San Francisco. She had moved to San Francisco to be a teacher at St. John's Academy at the what's the name of it?
The Joy of All Who Sorrow.
Yes, the new cathedral, Joy of All Who Sorrow, the one on Geary Street in San Francisco, and so she had taught there for yes
with St. John. It's like a people pilgrimage to that location. How lovely for her to be just sort of stationed there. How neat.
Yes, and so she's taught there for a couple of years, and then switched to veterinary technician work, as she found that was her other career that she was pursuing at that time, and she wanted to be a zookeeper, and so we got married and moved to Spokane, Washington, so she could work in a training zoo there to learn, and where they have rescued large cats such as tigers and lions, and she worked there for a year to learn the zookeeping trade.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. Like, that is really some variety there. But I assume she was Orthodox then, right?
Yes, she grew up Orthodox.
Oh, okay. Well, how nice. You met a nice Orthodox girl. You headed off to zookeeper school, as we all do. And then, so did she end up really being a zookeeper?
Yes. After zookeeping school, she spent 5 or 6 years working as a zookeeper at the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium in Tacoma, Washington. And she had a great time working with Sumatran tigers, and what else do they have there? They have river otters, they have a gibbon, they have an elephant, they had 3 elephants at that time, and an assortment of other Asian animals, and she just, she had an excellent time there, and worked there until 6 years, and then switched to veterinary technician work again, and got a certificate doing that. Works in a vet hospital, seeing mostly cats and dogs all the time.
Right, not quite as exotic as before, but good
Yes.
regular work. But okay, so as you guys moved up to Washington, then you were not able to work any longer at Raphael House. So where did you end up in Washington? What did you end up doing up there?
Oh my. Well,
Everything?
little bits of everything. It was when we finished in Spokane. As we were leaving Spokane, I kept looking at the news, and I said, well, who are the Lehman Brothers, and what's all this end-of-the-world headlines about them for? And, they say Wall Street's having a meltdown. I had no idea what that meant. But what it meant was that unemployment was going to be really high that year, and the next year, and the next year. And so I spent a while just trying to find a job. And so I did end up getting a couple of financial management jobs at nonprofit organizations. But
those are tough years to be a nonprofit, right? Because everybody relies on gifts, on charitable gifts, and when the economy's down, nonprofits are not booming. That's tough.
Back in those, at that time it really felt like nonprofits had a real emphasis on the non part, and just not a lot of money, not a lot of job security, and
Yeah, that's rough. That's a difficult time to happen to have made that move. That's unfortunate. My goodness. But so at what point did you start writing again? Like, when did you start? I know you have sort of the humor site, the website. I know you've written this one book that I've already read. But tell me, when did the writing start coming? Like the independent on your own writing start coming back for you?
Well, I started that kind of writing, I suppose, more like 2016, 2017. And at first I was trying to write memoirs about my time in Ukraine and about my time dealing with the premature birth of my son. But as I discovered, there actually isn't much of a market for that kind of a book, and so I ended up I wrote, I don't know, 4 or 5 drafts of each of those books, and it was kind of hard to get the beta readers even interested in them when they were done. So what I ended up doing was when the pandemic started, we couldn't go to summer camp. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to make an imaginary summer camp and create a whole list of characters and side stories and things like that out of the kids attending this summer camp. And so I just started to write.
I love that. And of course, pandemic, right? The pandemic is just doing this to all of us in some ways. But yeah, it's true. Memoir, it's such a neat kind of writing, and you feel like you've got all this wisdom from your whole life that you can just pour out. But it is true, there's not a huge audience for it, which is a shame. But I like that you ended up turning to fiction, because I really enjoyed your novel so much. And so tell us a little bit about it. It's called Voice in the Storm. And as you said, you invented a whole summer camp to fill in for not having summer camp. Tell us about it. Is it really based mostly on the summer camp where you've worked in the past?
Well, it's based on it in the sense that I was feeling badly we couldn't go, but that's about it. The summer camp that I have is in the book is way up in the mountains, and they do all kinds of fun stuff, and risk taking and adventures where people need to be saved and things like that. And the summer camp that we have here in Western Washington State is in the suburbs and overlooking the bay, and you'll let the kids go canoeing maybe 200 feet from shore. stuff like that.
Right,
So,
exactly. Well, I mean, we do have a lot of youth protection regulations, and we're all being careful not to get sued and not to.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of
When you're
interesting
writing-
lawsuits in American camping, actually. So.
Yeah. So you gotta, when you're writing fiction, you gotta raise the stakes.
That's right. But you did it beautifully, and I felt believably. Like, I really wasn't, and I work at a real summer camp, and I was not at all thinking about, like, come on. Yeah, I think you did a good job of framing it in a way where it was like, well, we're just stuck in this situation. Here we go. Gotta go. But I thought it was really beautifully done. So just summarize for our readers your novel a little bit so that they know what we're talking about.
Oh, well, this novel is about a summer camp with this main character named Helene, who absolutely loves going to Orthodox summer camp because she's got her best friends there. And there comes a forest fire that's putting smoke all throughout the valley, and she has to put her science skills to work to figure out how to keep camp open. She's only 13, but she's hearing the director and others talk about having to close camp because the smoke is just so stifling, and so she has to. And there's also happens to be a meteorologist at this camp who is studying the forest fire, and in fact, summer camps make great places for forest firefighters to base and to.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know what?
Yeah,
I work at two different camps, one in New Mexico, one in California. They both have been right next to forest fires and had the firefighters base there. Because, you've usually got a lake where you can pick up the water with the airplane. You've got big open fields. You've got these little outbuildings. It's perfect. And both of those camps have served that way in the last 8 years or so. I think it really is.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's really a natural fit. What you were saying, I was like, oh, I remember going through this. But,
So she's got to use her science skills, and then she's really shy, so she's got to use her science skills and get the help of her friends to organize this effort to get away from the smoke and to convince the director that it could work. And so that's her story. And then it's a novel in parts, so it switches to the other characters, and so you have another character having to deal with a father who's got an opioid addiction, another character dealing with a father who's pressuring him too much to become a priest, and he's rebelling from that. Another character who has to save a wedding from an overbearing momzilla, mother of the bride, and then finally you have the whole team having to come together to rescue people from a storm. So
it's beautiful. I love it so much, and I really think, I don't know, I think it's great because for young adult fiction you need some drama, but so much of it really is based in what they can recognize as being true. This great love of camp and this love of being with their friends, and knowing that their friends all have different things going on at home, and some of those things being sort of unimaginably hard, and some of those things being really quite silly. And I think it's lovely. I thought it was really, really neat. And of course, I'm a summer camp fanatic, so I'm completely the right audience for this book. But I really enjoyed it. If anyone in our audience wanted to read your book, how would they find it?
Oh, well, it's on Amazon. Kindle Direct Publishing is the publisher, and so if you searched on "Voice in the Storm" and then had my name after it, Ruthford, Ruthford, it would come up, and it's also listed in the what's its subgenre? I think it's
is it Christian?
Well, Amazon.com. It has 16,000 subcategories. So let's see here. What's it? I'm opening it up now, and it is Number 17, if you go to the Amazon bestsellers section, it's in bestsellers in teen and young adult Christian family fiction.
There you go. That's what Christian family fiction.
Yes. Amazon, with its categories, tries to create basically a swimming pool that's big enough for every book to have a little while at the top of the list, and so.
That's right. That's right. But it really is. I know one time I got a notice that I was like at number 2 on an Amazon list. I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh, okay, it's like a super specific list. But I mean, that's nice, you know, but that's really good. But no, it really is a neat novel. And right now actually is the moment for it, I think, because it's summertime and we need summer reading for our kids, and summer camp is just sort of the perfect topic. A lot of them will be at summer camp and coming home from summer camp shortly, and so it's a good novel for them to finish out the summer with. It really is. It's fun. I liked it so much, and I was really delighted with how so many, the characters are very real, their situations are very real, and it's beautifully done, and it's so Orthodox, and I feel like there are all these little details that Orthodox kids will recognize, and just, the representation is a wonderful thing, right? To be able to pick up a piece of art and to see something that looks like your own life. Orthodox kids don't get a lot of that because Orthodoxy is so different, and we tend to be really small groups, right? Like usually kids only have 1 or 2 other Orthodox kids if they go to public school. There are only a couple others there, and sometimes they don't even know those kids. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. I really enjoyed your book. Tell me about your website, the Daily Podvig.
Oh, well, that's a book. I mean, that's a website that has situations, humorous situations at church that with fictional characters, but it's written like in the style of newspaper reporting, and it has things like a new family comes to church, and it's just every single member of the family is far too distracting. So the headline is new family too cute for liturgy, and the dad in this family comes in with a shirt that says I love to fix things on it, and he's got a tape measure on his belt, and he's got his HVAC and electrician car or van parked outside, and so the priest starts thinking about, what kinds of projects can I get him to fix around here?
Right, exactly.
And the little kids are crawling around too fast and too cute, and it's silly stuff like that. Another one is after years of marital bliss, a couple realizes they have too many icons, and they've collected so many icons over 20 years that they've run out of wall space.
That is me. That is actually my story right there. You caught me. I'm having to box some up at this point, but that's lovely. I like that. It's, again, right, it's jokes that we can where we recognize ourselves, because there aren't a lot of awesome, hilarious websites about Orthodoxy, to tell you the truth. So it's nice to have some here and there. So that's the dailypodvig.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the novel is The Voice in the Storm. So what's next? Are you thinking about writing another novel? I remember, if I remember correctly, The Voice in the Storm hints that maybe it's part of a series. Is there going to be a series with the same characters, or how will it work?
It is going to be a series, and the second book in the series is going to have one of the characters have to deal with the surprise appearance of a prematurely born brother. And,
get some of that memoir info in there.
Yeah, sneak it in there somehow. Yeah, and how to deal with the bioethical challenges of getting treatment for your family members when the doctor is telling you that it's hopeless. And then the third book is going to be about the priest of this camp taking a group of 4 older campers to Ukraine to go on a choir singing tour. And so he's going to take his campers back to areas where he served in the Peace Corps in Ukraine.
Oh, nice. See, you found a way to use the memoir material. I love it. That's so cool.
Yes.
That's very creative, and that's really neat, and this would make for a great series of books, and so I'll be looking forward to them and watching for them for my kids, and I have a feeling someone in our audience may be as well, because it really is just such a neat series, and we have so enjoyed having you on the program tonight, Eric. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a delight. And thank you to our audience for joining us. Go look for Voice in the Storm under Christian Youth and Christian Family Fiction, or whatever Amazon's calling it. It really is wonderful. And Eric, good luck to you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care and good night.